The Helots, slave warriors of ancient Sparta. In the heart of ancient Greece, beyond the imposing walls of Sparta, a subdued people toiled in the fields, sowing grain, harvesting olives, and tending livestock. They were the Helots, enslaved warriors, bound by servitude, yet integral to the power and might of Sparta. Origins of the Helots. The Helots were not foreign captives, but rather the indigenous inhabitants of Laconia and Messenia, conquered by the Spartans in the 8th century BCE. Unlike traditional slaves, the Helots belonged not to individuals, but to the Spartan state. They worked the land, ensuring that the warrior elite of Sparta remained unburdened by manual labor and free to train for war. The term Helot itself is thought to derive from the Greek word hilotes, which may refer to those who had been captured or conquered. Their status as state-owned serfs meant they lived in a form of bondage, unlike that of slaves in other Greek city-states, as they could not be freely bought or sold. Instead, they were passed down through generations, trapped in an unending cycle of servitude. The backbone of Sparta's economy. The Helots formed the foundation of Spartan society, producing food and resources necessary for the city-state's survival. Every Spartan male was allotted a portion of land, worked by Helots, whose labor provided sustenance for their masters. In exchange, the Helots were permitted to keep a fraction of their produce, but lived under constant subjugation. Beyond agriculture, Helots also served in various labor-intensive roles, from domestic servants to craftsmen. Their contributions extended to building infrastructure, such as roads and fortifications, which further strengthened Sparta's military prowess. Despite their crucial role, they were never recognized for their labor, forever subjected to the disdain of their Spartan overlords. The importance of the Helots to the Spartan economy was so great that Spartan citizens dedicated their lives exclusively to military training and governance. Unlike in other Greek city-states, where citizens participated in trade and farming, Spartans relied entirely on Helot labor to sustain their way of life. The oppression and the krypaya. The Spartans, ever wary of rebellion, enforced brutal control over the Helots. The infamous krypaya, a secretive force of young Spartan warriors, was tasked with instilling terror among the Helot population. These warriors patrolled the countryside, assassinating strong or outspoken Helots to prevent uprisings. Helots were ritually humiliated, forced to wear degrading attire, and compelled to endure mockery and violence at the hands of their Spartan overlords. The constant oppression bred deep resentment among the Helots, yet their numbers far exceeded those of the Spartan citizens. Fearful of these overwhelming numbers, the Spartans devised strict regulations, including public beatings, arbitrary executions, and systematic psychological warfare to break their spirit. The krypaya also had a secondary purpose. It served as a rite of passage for young Spartan warriors. By killing Helots deemed dangerous, these young men proved their loyalty to Sparta and their readiness for war. This systematic oppression ensured that Helots remained in a state of perpetual fear and submission. Helots in warfare. Despite their enslavement, the Helots occasionally took up arms for Sparta. In times of war, they were used as auxiliary troops or lightly armed soldiers, fighting alongside their Spartan masters. During the Peloponnesian War, 431 to 404 BCE, thousands of Helots were promised freedom in exchange for military service. However, the Spartans often reneged on such promises, fearing an empowered Helot class. Notably, Helots also played a critical role as logistical support, carrying supplies, constructing fortifications, and managing war provisions. Their forced participation in war only reinforced their resentment, as they bled for a state that denied them even the most basic freedoms. In some cases, particularly desperate situations led the Spartans to arm large numbers of Helots. The most famous example was in 424 BCE, when the Spartans freed 700 Helots and equipped them as hoplites, heavily armed soldiers, for battle. However, even after proving their bravery, many of these Helots were later executed or returned to servitude. Revolts and resistance. Throughout Spartan history, Helots launched multiple revolts, the most famous occurring after a massive earthquake in 464 BCE. Seeing an opportunity, thousands of Helots rose against their oppressors, seizing strongholds and battling for their freedom. Though the rebellion was ultimately crushed, it forced the Spartans to recognize the ever-present threat posed by their enslaved class. Other revolts occurred periodically, with Helots often seeking refuge in rival city-states such as Athens, where they found some semblance of support. These acts of defiance prove that despite centuries of subjugation, the Helots never accepted their status willingly. One of the longest-lasting resistance movements took place in Messenia, where Helots maintained strongholds for decades. The Second Messenian War, circa 685 to 668 BCE, was essentially a prolonged struggle between the Helots and the Spartans, with the former fighting to reclaim their homeland. Although ultimately unsuccessful, these resistance efforts showcased the Helots' determination to break free from their oppressors. Decline of Spartan power and the fate of the Helots. As Sparta's military supremacy waned in the 4th century BCE, its rigid social structure began to crumble. The liberation of the Helots came gradually, particularly after Sparta's defeat by Thebes at the Battle of Leuctra in 371 BCE. The once feared Spartan state, built on the backs of Helot labor, fell into decline, and with it, the Helots gained their long-sought freedom. By the time of the Roman conquest of Greece in the 2nd century BCE, the Spartan system of Helot servitude had largely disintegrated. Many former Helots assimilated into other Greek communities, though the scars of their past endured in the collective memory of their descendants. Some Helots, particularly those in Messenia, were formally granted independence in the 4th century BCE. The city of Mesene was founded as a refuge for liberated Helots, providing them with a home where they could finally live free from Spartan oppression. Legacy of the Helots. The Helots stand as a testament to the paradox of Spartan society, an elite warrior class sustained by an oppressed people. Their story is one of endurance, resilience, and resistance, shedding light on the hidden forces that shaped one of history's most formidable military states. Though often overshadowed by their Spartan masters, the Helots' impact on Greek history remains undeniable. The Helots' plight also serves as a reminder of the fragility of power structures built upon oppression. Sparta's reliance on a subjugated class ultimately contributed to its downfall, proving that even the mightiest military state could not suppress the will for freedom indefinitely. Today, the Helots remain a symbol of endurance and resistance, a crucial yet often overlooked chapter in the history of ancient Greece. Their story underscores a broader truth in human history. No empire, no matter how powerful, can forever silence the voices of those who yearn for freedom,